And my heart is filled on a Thursday afternoon, I guess technically Thursday morning, hanging out with our guy from PFF, Tampa Bay, Trey, and Mr. Sikkema. Let us begin here. We were talking before we started rolling. I'm doing the back and forth and back and forth. So I'm in the studio today. I will be going back to Costa Mesa tomorrow. But I want to begin here, right? Over the last week, let's say, my expectations have been kind of filled, right? Like the Raiders defense, in my humble silver and black jaded colored glasses, look really good, right? The defense looks as expected. From a national perspective, like what is the expectation for this Raiders defense in 2024?
No, I mean, like the expectations are pretty high for this group. And I remember the last time that I was on here chatting with you, I talked about how I really love their emphasis for defense going into this season. And I think that you saw that throughout the offseason and what they were able to do and how they emphasized obviously going out and getting Christian Wilkins and, drafting guys like Damian Richardson and other potential defensive starters as well. Like I know Tommy Eichenberg was in the class. So there have been a lot of defensive additions. And as you're sort of figuring things out on offense with the quarterback position, obviously you got Gardner, you got Aiden O'Connell as well. The offense is going to be a little bit of a work in progress, but you could really emphasize the defensive side of things. And I think the expectations should be pretty high for this group. Like, I get it. I think the defensive line is going to be better than it ever has been. I think certainly in like the Max Crosby era, like when he's been there and as he's been going off, a lot of people have been like, man, he needs some help. I think he's got some help this year, right? I mean, not just with Wilkins, but like Malcolm Kuntz as well. John Jenkins on the defensive line too. Like there's a lot of guys. Tyree Wilson, obviously you're hoping that he takes a big second year step as well. So there's a lot of hope within that front to say, okay, now we've got some speed behind him. We got some drafted guys that we like that are really kind of potentially coming into their own in the secondary as well. So you've got, Antonio Pierce, who's overseeing a lot of that defensive guy. He's had a lot of success in the league himself, big time players coach. A lot of people believe in him. So why not be optimistic, right? I think you and I have talked about that before. Like sometimes people get overly optimistic because it's the preseason and, it's just it's pie in the sky, everything. But why not be optimistic about this Raiders defense right now, given what it's been on paper? And like you said, the little bit of what we've seen already in training camp. I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited.
I was talking to one of our former players and analyst, Lincoln Kennedy, earlier this week kind of about the defense. And he brought up a great point that I hadn't really thought of. And he goes, Link's been around this team for, north of 20 years. And he goes, the past 20 years, for better or for worse, the Raiders have been predicated and have been defined by their offense. And at times, unfortunately, the lack of offense. And he goes, but now this is the first time where we all collectively kind of have to shift our thinking and understand that, like, hey, this is going to be in many ways a defense-first team. Like I said, the expectation is we have a top 10 group on that side of the football, and you have you have to have the offense do just enough to kind of keep you in games and win some games down the stretch. Like when you look at it, we kind of zoom out on the 2024 Raiders. Do you think that's going to be the formula? Is you're going to lean on this defense heavy and hope whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Gardner or Aiden, that they can do just enough and kind of run the ball and control the clock to come away with enough W's to get into the postseason?
Yeah, and it should be, right? And I think this should be a building block season for them, right? I mean, I don't think that I'm shocking anybody when I say that, the Chiefs going for the 3-peat, they're the favorites to win the division. Sure. And so for the Raiders right now, you're kind of building towards what is the future. Again, I believe last time I was on talking with you, we chatted about how there's potential where over the next year or so, like the Chiefs could lose some players. Now, they're not going to lose Mahomes. You're always going to have Mahomes, but some of those big name players might be on their way out over the next year or two. And I think that's going to open the door for another team to sort of usher in whatever that next wave is of the AFC East. And I think, the AFC West. And I think that the Raiders are doing a really good job emphasizing the defensive side of the football, because I'm going to be honest, I think you can change offense quicker than you can change defense. Defense is sort of like when you're in a meal prep phase and you got to go like day after day after day of being in a little caloric deficit, you're not immediately just going to become ripped. Like it is something that you have to build. Whereas sometimes on the other side of things, bulking, very easy, right? I'm going to go hammer home a whole pizza and I'm going to, bench 225, 3 times. And then all of a sudden, boom, look, I'm going to be bigger. So it's easier, I think, to change things on the offensive side of the football. And for the Raiders and their timeline, they're setting the foundation for the defense to be solid. And then maybe a year, 2 years from now, whatever it is, they're going to be able to make a couple of additions on offense where all of a sudden, like, look at Chicago, man.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what Chicago's done in just 2 years. Now, of course, they've gotten lucky, if you will, having the number 1 overall pick last year, being able to trade it, getting a guy like Caleb Williams this year. But I'm even talking about the receiver room. 2 years ago at PFF, we rank all sorts of like position units going into the season. 2 years ago, the Chicago Bears were 32nd. Their receiving core was 32nd in the NFL. This year, it's third. They're third. And I think that just goes to show you can make quicker additions on the offensive side of the ball, and you can revamp that side of the ball in an easier way, or I would say more rapid way than you can defense. Defense is a lot of times about cornerstones. It's about chemistry. It's about that kind of stuff. So I think they're approaching everything from the right perspective, not just in 2024, but to really compete in the years that follow.
And look, it's an old cliche for a reason, right? Defense wins championships. And the fact that now this team has an identity going into this year of being stout defensively, of not giving an inch on that side of the football. And again, asking your offense to, hey, do enough, but we don't need you to go out there and put up 35, 40 points a game. But sticking on the defensive side of the football there, I want to talk about one of the stories that you just had up on PFF.com, and my eyes got big when I saw the headline come through, and I saw the Raiders logo up there as well. But you essentially did a piece, Trevor, about day 3 guys that you think have a legitimate chance to start and see heavy action in 2024. And one of the guys that you highlighted was our very own Damian Richardson. So when you look at Damian, and let's just start kind of back in the college days, like, what about Damian made him an intriguing prospect for you? And then secondly, what about his position, not his position per se, but about his situation here in Las Vegas makes it, one that you say, hey, I can see this guy playing in 2024?
Yeah, certainly when you look at Damian Richardson and you sort of scout him, I mean, the natural God-given traits, if you will. I mean, that's the stuff that you can't teach. Sitting at 6'2", I mean, that's 95th percentile for the cornerback position. It gives you that height and that length to be able to go up against all different types of wide receivers, especially the bigger ones that you're going to face at the NFL level. But then he's got the athleticism to him too. 4.3, 440-yard dash. I mean, he jumped over 10 feet in the broad, almost 11 feet in the broad. I mean, he's got that explosiveness and that speed to him. So then you go, okay, now he can match up against other guys. So it's not just the size, but it's the athleticism too that is the rare combination that you always want to take a bet on. Now, for Richardson, he had some really good coverage grades, specifically in his final year at Mississippi State last year. The reason why he ended up being an early day 3 pick is because it's a lack of turnovers forced. No interceptions throughout his entire college football career. And that seems strange for a player that has the size and the athleticism that he does. He's still working on that quick anticipation and feel for exactly when the ball is coming to you. But he knows how to kind of, when I saw him last year, he looked like that was the best version of himself when it came to that anticipation, because he was able to get his hands on passes. He was able to stay hip to hip with a lot of wide receivers. He wasn't quite there yet when it came to anticipating things so well that he gets his head turned around even before the ball's getting there, getting his hands on it, getting some turnovers, getting some interceptions. That's ultimately what you want from top tier corners. And when you look at the Raiders and their projected depth chart right now, you got Jones on the outside. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be steady for them as an outside corner. Hobbs can be a guy who could play in the slot, but then Bennett, young guy, but kind of struggled a little bit last year. Didn't exactly play great in coverage. That CB2 outside position to me is sort of up for grabs, or at least Camryn, if he has the opportunity to stand out really well in training camp, maybe the early parts of the season, might end up being a job that he could gain there. That's the point of the article there. So I understand why you draft him where you do, in both ways, right? Totally understand why he is a priority day 3 type of pick that he was, but then also the reason why he wasn't a day 2 selection is just he's got to get his hands on the football more. And if he can do that, he could be a steal for the Raiders, and a guy that they could really love on the outside is that bigger, longer, athletic corner.
You know what he kind of reminded me of when I was reading your breakdown earlier today? I'm catching shades of Trayvon Merrick from a few years ago, right? Where Trayvon plays a ton of snaps, but you're looking for that big play, that turnover, and it wasn't quite there yet, right? And he was solid, and we always joked, like, in the best possible way, like, we kind of forgot he was back there. I mean, as a rookie, this dude played a ton, but you just kind of forgot he was there because you didn't have that kind of big level production like you're talking about. So again, for a guy like Camryn, who played a lot in college, who, like, to your point, had really good coverage grades, it seems like that's the next logical step, like you say it is the turnovers, but you kind of see the similarities between him and a Trayvon, who, to his credit, has really kind of turned that around and has become much more of a ball hawk in 2023.
And I love Trayvon when he was coming out of the draft, man. He is somebody who I was a big fan of, and I was trying to preach patience to people because we saw it when he was at TCU. We saw that ability to be able to break on the ball. But, man, when you play safety at the NFL level, it's tough, man. I mean, the speed of everything is just so much faster. The receivers are faster. Quarterbacks are making faster decisions. The arm talent is a lot better. So the window for you to make an impact on the ball is it's even smaller than it is at the college level. And so for a safety, man, you've just got to have those instincts and you've got to understand the speed around you. I knew it was going to take a little bit of time for Merrick, but I'm glad that he got those early steps. And I'm glad that we saw a really good version of him last year. I think he could be even better this year. Because again, I was a big fan of him when he was coming out of college.
We got some big Trayvon fans in our department. So you've made them all very, very happy by saying that, like, hey, this guy, he was good in college. He's going to be good in the pros. And like, look, for us, right? Like we talk about, just seeing the progression year after year after year. And Trayvon has been, kind of the perfect example of that. But, kind of just shifting to the offensive side of the rookies for a second. I know you're an SEC guy. We were talking about the SEC a second ago before we started rolling, but I got to be honest with you, brother. I saw Brock Bowers doing his thing at camp this week, right? And I think, for a dude who's quiet, who's kind of going to go about his business, like the vets have been kind of, I wouldn't say making fun of him, but, just kind of giving him a hard time. Like, hey, he doesn't talk a lot, right? He talks a lot on the field, but, he's not going to be the noisiest dude in the meal room. He looks as advertised, right? Like he very much looks as looks like a playmaker, a difference maker, a dude who is going to be able to be really versatile in what Luke Getsy asked him to do. Like I'm not sipping the Kool-Aid on this guy, right? Like if everything, if Brock's able to stay healthy and keep progressing, like he's going to be a pretty darn good football player in 2024, right?
Think about those Georgia teams during Brock Bowers' early years when he was there, 2021, 2022. They're winning national championships. Like these aren't even just like good SEC teams. These are national championship winning SEC teams. Brock Bowers was so good that they had to get him on the field as a true freshman for that program and that team that was making that kind of run in college football, the college football playoff, and then to the national championship game. So to me, I think that there's a cool way to sometimes look at scouting that people have. It's called like an age metric, right? Where it breakout age is the way that they really categorize it. If you are able to dominate in college football at a younger age, well, it means more, right? And that's not always to say like if you don't dominate when you're young, it's like a kiss of death, like you can't become a good player. We see that all the time. Redshirt juniors, redshirt seniors, they end up performing well. They're just later bloomers. But the players who are able to dominate as underclassmen, those are the players you got to take note of because these are 18, 19-year-old kids who might be dominating, 22, 23-year-olds have been playing college football for 4 or 5 years. So for Brock Bowers to have elite PFF grades as a true freshman, as a true sophomore, and as a true junior 3 years in a row, that just tells you how consistently dominant this guy is, how Georgia had to just get him on the field and emphasize him in their passing game as the years went on. And it does not surprise me at all that he is as advertised because quite frankly, he was one of the best players in college football on either side of the ball over the last 2 seasons. And, I think a lot of people, when that draft pick happened, they go, well, wait a second, the Raiders have Michael Mayer. Why would they do that? And it's like, brother, ain't many Brock Bowers that come around very often. Like you got to be able to draft that player and then kind of figure it out with the guys that you have. And I think certainly with where the game is going, being able to play multiple tight end sets. I mean, when Mayer and Brock Bowers are doing their thing, that is a scary 12 personnel to be able to put yourself in because those guys will give you all the effort that they can in blocking, but they're also fantastic receivers when it comes to play action usage too. So there's a ton of versatility there, a big time ceiling with both of those guys. And no surprise to me that Brock Bowers is standing out early.
Yeah, and to be fair, right, we kind of talk about what AP is building here, right, and the big tight ends, right, like talk about the 12 personnel. It's very much in line with the kind of football that he wants to play in 2024. Before I get you out of here, though, we have real football, air quotes, back tonight. The Hall of Fame game is rocking and rolling, which is a lot of fun. Again, you're not going to see any of the big dogs playing, but I am very excited for one small element of this game, Mr. Sikkema. the kickoff. We are going to get our first taste, our first real in-person look at what these new kickoff rules look like. Our specialist talked yesterday, Daniel Carson and AJ Cole, and they were kind of diving into like, look, we're just as intrigued as everyone else as what these teams are going to do with this new rule. And he's like, we have a bunch of wrinkles that we're ready to throw out. But like, for me, I am stoked. I cannot wait to see all the weirdness. Like, I am of the belief that like by week 4, week 5, everyone's going to kind of figure it out. But brother, these next, let's call them 8 weeks, it's going to be the wild, wild west for special teams, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a little bit of it in the XFL, right? I think the XFL was sort of the trial period, if you will, and it was exciting. It was very exciting. It was new, it was different, but man, let's face it. I mean, right now, kickoffs are pointless. I mean, you're blasting it all the way through the end zone. You're just giving the team the ball where they need to get the ball, and so this actually, it makes special teams valuable again. We talk about, all right, well, there's 3 phases of the game. Well, it feels like, over the last couple of years, the emphasis of that third phase of the game, not that it's been 0, it certainly has not, but the importance, or at least the ability to be able to swing the game if you don't do your job right, was less and less, because the rule book, or where they were kicking it off from, or whatever it was mitigating how much you could really be able to flip the game. Because I think that's the whole point of special teams, right? It's supposed to give you another angle to say, hey, normally it's kind of just a nothing play. But if you don't do your job and I catch you not doing your job, boom, all of a sudden it could be something that swings the entire contest, offense and defense included. So to me, this is just something that brings a little bit of extra value to it, while also keeping the game safe the way the NFL wanted to, as they have adjusted things over the last couple of years. And I'm very excited because it's a different game, right? It's not the same type of kickoff where you think of Dante Hall and Devin Hester and Cordarrelle Patterson and like guys like that, where speed and just being shot out of a cannon was probably the most important trait of a kick returner of old. Now it's like ball carrier vision, right? Like running back vision, almost yards after catch vision. It's almost like you're seeing the offensive line when you get the ball back there as a kick returner. So I am very excited for it as well. I can't wait to see how these NFL athletes adapt to this new rule.
Yeah, and our special teams coordinator, Tom McMahon, brought up a great point yesterday where he was talking about, he goes, if you look at the league leader in special teams tackles a year ago, he essentially said like his expectation is that number is going to go up about 3-fold in 2024, which therefore means more jobs for folks, more opportunities. So across the board, a W for a lot of people. And as I always like to say, special teams does win ball games. All right, sir, what are you working on? I know that we are approaching your crazy banana seat type of the portion of the calendar. So what do you and the PFF guys got cooking up right now?
Yeah, right now, still grinding away at summer scouting. So, anybody that's got an eye towards the 2025 NFL draft, we're trying to get you guys as ready as possible with some names that you could watch for the upcoming college football season, knowing that they could potentially become Las Vegas Raiders at some point in time. So, yeah, that's something that we're working on over at the NFL Stock Exchange show, also over at PFF.com. And really just, we're getting ready, man. We're going to be watching these preseason games, going to be trying to take in as much as we possibly can to be ready to cover it, get you all the grades and the advanced data that everybody loves over at PFF.com.
Well, we appreciate you guys. You guys do an awesome job. Per usual, big shout out to my friend PFF Dave. I don't know if that's what he's going by these days, but that's what I call him in my heart. So big shout out to PFF Dave. It was so good to see you, man. And once we get a little further down the road, we get a little closer to, hey, who's going to be QB1 and all that good stuff, we got to have you back on to slice and to dice it up. But in the meantime, man, enjoy the remaining few days, weeks of your summer, and we'll catch up with you soon, okay?
You guys as well. I'm looking forward to it.